happens in the wind is it'll start to wobble a little bit, and I can lower the gain to deal with that, but lowering the gain will affect the stability.
Yeah, I'm close.
Quads and helicopters have a lot of similarities in terms of when they're hovering. A quad may not be a bad choice for learning how to hover a helicopter because there's not a lot to repair. I'd say this is more stable in the wind than a small fixed pitch helicopter, and the blades are very inexpensive. The frames are fiberglass, and even if you were to bend a prop, the motors are still pretty cheap. If you were to bend a shaft to the motor, it's still pretty cheap. So I have this ping pong ball, which is basically stolen from a training gear from a 450. And I just tape that in place. And as you can see, it came with an extra board that you can mount on top to mount your receiver. I just put my receiver underneath, and I took the extra 3mm standoffs and just made an extended landing gear. That way I can land in the grass here. Pretty neat little quad. I have here a CR4 230mm quadcopter. This is from Xheli, and I've got some time on this, and this is the version that comes with a multi-Wii controller board. The multi-Wii comes in different board layouts. This one's sort of a custom one. The nice thing about this quad is that it came with a lot of good documentation. When I put this together, it came with some standoffs and an extra little board here, so you could, if you wanted to mount the receiver on top. I opted to take those extra little plastic standoffs and make a little like landing struts here, so that it landed sort of flat in the grass. I fly off of grass, so it made it so that it was a little more stable landing. And I've got the battery mounted on the bottom. It has a breakout board here for the power and a T-plug. So here's my Gens Ace battery, and I've got a T-plug that I've got on that. I mounted my receiver down here at the bottom, and I also took a spare helicopter training gear and just wire tied and taped this little ball to the front. That way I can easily tell front and back. It has 4. This is the version that came as the almost ready to fly. So it didn't have a battery, it didn't have a receiver, but it had all the connectors needed to just plug it in and ready to go. It comes with 4 200 and it's about 2800 kV, I believe. Is sorry, it's 1800 kV. So it's 4 1800 kV motors, and it has 4 3-blade 5x3 GWS props. Mine has seen a bit of action already, and one thing that I liked about this is it's a fiberglass construction, so it's a little bit flexible in case you run into things. I've had a number of crashes trying different things, playing around, flying in high wind, and I just took a piece of fiberglass board and I used CA glue to repair a joint. So so far into this, I've had a number of little mishaps in the grass or on pavement, and I might have broken a propeller. In this case, I had a little crack, and the repairs were very easy. One thing I'll say for this is that it's very similar to hovering, say, a fixed pitch. But the nice thing is with the controller, it's like having a fly-barless controller built into it. So the multi-Wii comes with two different flight modes. You can make it so that it auto-level. So when you let go of the stick and it's tilted, it will automatically right itself, and you can calibrate, you know, what is level. And you've got sort of a heading hold mode, or they might call it a 3D mode, where once you point it one direction, it stays there. So if I were to compare this to, say, the flying characteristics of a fixed pitch helicopter, I'd say that this quad is actually easier to learn on than a fixed pitch helicopter. The nice thing about the multi-Wii version is that it comes with a disc, and it comes with software and a manual. A couple little tips that I'll give you is that you don't need to actually change anything on the firmware. It does mention in the manual about compiling firmware and messing with firmware. I didn't even have to do any of that. All I had to do was hook it up with the little USB adapter. And one quick little tip is that it's got a little indicator. It says ground. I wired that up to the gray. And then the ground, I should say the gray and ground on this side, okay, is on the front of the board. Okay, so basically, when I first got this, I started to hook it up, and the instruction manuals were pretty clear on what channels had to go to what connections on the board for the receiver, and I've got a little spectrum down there. So when it installed, it created these different directories: multi-Wii, multi-Wii 1.9, and what you want is the configuration, the multi-Wii CONF 1.9. So if I go in there, and you can see this, I'm selecting the Windows 32 application, and then I click on multi-Wii config 1.9. So I'm going to run this, just double clicking on it, and it's going to bring up the little Java application. One thing I want to point out is that you need to find out what serial port the USB adapter installs to. In my case, it's COM port 10. And a quick little run of this is, even though it's already set to COM port 10, I still have to click on that, and then this stuff turns green, and then I hit start. Then it will talk to the multi-Wii controller. So one cool thing here is that if I take the quadcopter and I tilt it, okay, if you look right here in the corner, it will actually tell you if you're rolling, okay, and then pitch. Isn't that neat? Okay. The compass won't do anything because this particular board does not have the compass or the baro option on it. But this is really nice because you can tell that you've got it oriented correctly. Let's say if you wanted to take this controller board and move it to another quad, or you're building one from scratch, it's really cool. So one of the nice things is that if you want to check to see whether or not your sticks are reversed correctly in the transmitter, if I go right on aileron or roll, okay, you can see the bar going to the right. That means I had the reversing correct. If I pull back on the pitch, you can see that slider goes down or forward. If I go up on the throttle, you can see the little bar going up and down, and also for the yaw, okay, you can see the yaw moving. So that's a really nice indication that I've got everything set up right. As you can see on there, it also is good for telling you whether or not you're centered correctly with your sticks, and you might have to adjust the sub-trim. Your center should be around 15, 20, something like that. Now over here you can set up your auxiliary inputs. I've got one of my auxiliary channels on my receiver plugged into the auxiliary of the multi-Wii, board, and so I've got mine set up for arm. So if I flip a switch, basically it's going to be armed or disarmed. But you can set up your auxiliary switch to do a number of things, to where it may be the switch also makes it so that it auto levels. You can select that. Let me disengage the. So I can take this and I can make it so that when I hit that switch, it goes to level. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky about the clicking. Up here are the gain settings. So the more gain, the more stability it tries to achieve. You might play with the P characteristics. Basically PID stands for proportional integral derivative. I left mine alone and it flew just fine. If you get more into wanting to mess with those parameters, you can do that here, but for me, I didn't really have to mess with it. Down here is a little bar graph, and that shows basically the movement of the sensors. Okay, so it'll show you the different thing. There's purple, and that's for rotation. Okay. So depending upon what you move, it'll show you the movement on the sensors. That's kind of cool because you can like spin it up and look for the vibrations and stuff like that. So I don't want to go too much further in depth. That's pretty much what you need to do in order to get it up and flying. I would suggest that if you know somebody who knows how to fly a quad, to get them to help you out. If not, then do a little research on RC groups. I do have a link to different RC groups threads on My Cool Xheli in the quad section, and I cover the multi-wii just real quick. Once again, there's a lot of stuff out there in RC groups. I want to give a quick rundown of a different version that Xheli has. This is the version that has the KK board, and just to make a long story short, when you get the KK board, it's pretty stable, but there are other firmwares that you can download. You really need to read a little bit on the internet, but here's the nickel tour. It has the USB adapter, and you got to get a download for that. I do have a link on My Cool Xheli, and also a tool that I like to use called Lazy Zero. And after you've downloaded that, you run the serial tool, and it's going to pop up a Java app. Just like with the multi-wii, you need to have the Java installed to make this work. And it's going to run through a bunch of this stuff here, and then it's going to pop up the application. If you got a bigger screen than this little laptop, it's a lot easier to read. But basically, it'll find the little USB ASP board. That is what this is, the USB ASP, and you need to pick your board. A lot of them will work with this one, but I've chosen the KK Blackboard 168. That's going to work with this board. And if you're running it with a quad, then under the firmware type, you want to run X-Copter. That's where it flies in an X. And the very first one, at least in the current thing here, is X-Copter 4.7 KK by Captain Cook. And it's a piezo version here. So if you want something that works pretty good here, I'd say the 4.7 X-Copter that's what I run on this quad and another quad, and it works pretty good. Once again, with the unlike the multi-wii, the KK board, you've got a little bit more reading to do and messing around. What took really the most amount of time for me, the very first time when I used a different KK board, was getting the USB adapter all working and so forth. This time it was a little bit easier because I knew what I was doing, but I did put a link on where to start on the quad section at My Cool Xheli. So I'd suggest that if you get it, start there, and that'll give you sort of a pointer on where to go. If you need help, go to the RC groups threads, tell them what you have, post pictures, be very descriptive, but don't use too many words. Once again, I think that these little quads are really cool to have. Anybody's got a helicopter, it'd be a real cool thing, addition to your fleet, to have a little quad. You can start out small and then work your way bigger. They even got little micro quads, but they fly a lot like a helicopter, like a fixed pitch helicopter. They're very maneuverable. You can do all kinds of things with them in terms of add little things on the bottom and try to lift objects or something like that. There's a lot of variety to what you can do, and the other nice thing is that the parts for the actual frame are very inexpensive. You can get this kit for like $30, and if you crash, you can replace all those fiberglass parts. It's only going to cost you like $30. So even if you get a ready to fly, it doesn't hurt to actually get a little kit as a spare part. But once again, they're lots of fun to fly, and I recommend that you get something like this and play around with it and have some fun.